According to reporting from the Washington Post, Donald Trump has been clashing with members of his administration in regard to foreign policy geared toward Iran. Now, we've been hearing all week that there has been an escalation toward war with Iran. And we've heard John Bolton and other administration officials claiming that Iran is a danger to US forces and also our coalition forces, even though they have not provided any evidence of that. According to the Washington Post, though, Trump is frustrated with some of his top advisors who he thinks could rush the United States into a military confrontation with Iran and shatter his longstanding pledge to withdraw from costly foreign wars. And this is according to several US officials who spoke to the Washington Post, of course, on condition of anonymity.
I want to give you context here as Anna tells you the rest of the story. So these are the different warring factions, if you will, within the White House. So first, the pro-war side leaked, and they went to the papers and said, "Oh my God, the Iranians are gathering and they're a real threat, and our intelligence officials say we should be really concerned, and we're thinking of sending 120,000 troops to Iran, and they're testing the water, see how that goes, and they're trying to also goad and push us into war and make it appear that it's the Trump White House official policy, so that the rest of the Republicans fall in line." Now, the people who are opposed to them in the White House and in the US government are pushing back through this leak, saying no, they don't represent Trump, and what they're saying is not necessarily true. And so this is a battle of leaks. That's your context. Let's hear these guys out, and then we'll tell you who we think is really in charge.
Now, according to the Washington Post, the US officials who spoke to the reporters said that Trump prefers a diplomatic approach to resolving tensions and wants to speak directly with Iran's leaders. And I think that that is believable because Trump has said over and over again that he wants to withdraw troops from the wars that we've already engaged in. But more importantly, he doesn't want to engage in more wars. Now, as we know, he seemed to be pushing for regime change war in Venezuela, and then he backed away from that a little bit. So who knows what's really going on in his mind, but it would break a campaign promise if he engaged in war with Iran, and it doesn't appear to be something that's popular with his base. So let me give you more. Trump wants to talk to the Iranians. He wants a deal and is open to negotiation with the Iranian government. That's according to a senior administration official. Also, Trump allegedly grew angry last week and over the weekend about what he sees as warlike planning that is getting ahead of his own thinking. And I want to quote an administration official who said, "They're getting way out ahead of themselves and Trump is annoyed. There was a scramble for Bolton and Pompeo and others to get on the same page." So we know who the war hawks are. I mean, John Bolton loves war. John Bolton is one of the individuals who successfully pushed for war in Iraq during the Bush administration. And remember, Trump is the one who used that war to his advantage when he was running for president. It's actually mind-boggling that John Bolton is in his administration. And it would be dumb for him to let John Bolton, suck this administration and this entire country into yet another regime change war in Iran.
Well, that's why Bolton is in Trump's administration, because Trump is not very bright. If he knew what Bolton was stood for, it makes no sense to have him in the administration. So let's talk about two different things here. One is, who are these leakers? Who are the ones warning, don't go to war with Iran? It appears to be the military. So let me give you some quotes from the Washington Post article that leads me to believe that. Well, this was fairly obvious. It says, some defense officials have described Bolton's more aggressive approach as troubling. Okay, so that's people in the Pentagon going, this is dumb. But it's not really hidden at all. Here's another quote. Multiple officials and uniformed officers from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, led by its chairman, Marine Corps General Joseph Dunford Jr., have been among the leading voices articulating the costs of war with Iran. So that's the head of the Joint Chiefs saying, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, okay? So which side is Trump on? Well, based on his publicly available quotes where he says things along the lines of, he wants to talk to the Iranians and he wants a deal. Well, that's not a direct quote from Trump, but he has said things along similar lines that these advisors are backing up. It does appear that he's more in the camp of being a little bit more cautious about this. Now, but he's got to act that out Yeah, because Bolton is significantly smarter than him. So Bolton goes, oh, no, I understand, Mr. President. You want to show the Iranians your boss, but you still like to negotiate with them and you don't necessarily want to get entangled in a war. Let me just put 120,000 troops right on their border and see what happens.
Right.
So it would be super easy to trick Trump into a war.
That's what I'm afraid of, because I think, and I'm giving him credit here, and maybe it's not deserved, but I do think that internally he doesn't want to engage in war. I mean, we've seen over and over again that he does find these wars costly. He does find them nonsensical. He wants to bring troops home from Afghanistan and Iraq. So all of that does make sense when you take this article into account, this reporting from the Washington Post into account. But at the same time, he's so impressionable. He's a bit of a wild card. Who was the last person he spoke to? What did they tell him? Did they influence him? And it seems like he goes back and forth on any given day, depending on who he last spoke to. And so is John Bolton and his mustache persuasive enough to drag Donald Trump into war with Iran?
And on any given day. So I don't want to give Trump too much credit here, because I've always said he does not have a governing philosophy, nor is it about peace. At most, he has slight inclinations. He has an inclination to do trade wars, right? He has an inclination against immigration. And he has a slight inclination against interventionism, but it could easily be overcome. He bombs the living crap out of the Middle East as we speak right now. He kills a lot more civilians than even Obama did, and Obama killed plenty of civilians. So he's not a peacenik, so that's crazy talk. But it does appear that he is certainly less inclined than not just Bolton, but also Secretary of State Pompeo. Pompeo goes over to Europe and he says to the Europeans, oh, you don't understand, Iran is coming and they're really dangerous, and they mounted some rockets on some small ships. The Europeans said, quote, Pompeo didn't show us any evidence.
Right.
And then secondly, they mounted some rockets on small ships. We sent an aircraft carrier.
Right.
I mean, we keep being the aggressors and goading them, and that is the most significant danger here.
Let me add to that, because this is important. Hugh Hewitt was on MSNBC today speaking to Ali Velshi, and that interview was striking. And I want to give Velshi credit, because he asked some tough questions and he fought back against what I believe are just outright lies by Hewitt. There is now this propaganda campaign about how Iran allegedly blew up some oil tankers. There has been no evidence of that, okay? I'll believe it when I see the evidence that Iran was actually behind it. And so the fear-mongering, very similar to what we saw in the lead up to the Iraq invasion, is happening right now. And we cannot allow someone like Hugh Hewitt and people like him to keep fear-mongering and spreading outright lies about how much of a threat Iran poses. Iran is not a threat. As you guys know, I mean, we covered the story earlier this week of a British intelligence official who said that Iran is not an imminent threat. And what did the Trump administration do? They came out and they tried to brush that under the rug and say, no, his facts are wrong. Iran is a threat. Based on what? Where's your evidence? They don't provide any evidence.
In fact, one more thing about that from the Washington Post. They said among the reasons why the agitators for conflict say that Iran's a real threat is literally rockets on a small ship. It's described as small ships. But also, secondly, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and regular Iranian military units that some US officials have interpreted as a potential threat to the US military and diplomatic personnel. That's not an evidence. That's Bolton saying, I am interpreting their Revolutionary Guard as hostile. That's not, I mean, by definition, that's not evidence. That's you saying, I'd really, really like to go to war. And so that brings me finally to the people influencing him. I wanna give credit to MSNBC here, which I don't often do. And I get frustrated by when they think the bombs are beautiful and the wars are great, which they do on many occasions. But Chris Hayes also had a very good segment against the Iran war. And you're right about Ali Velshi's segment, so credit where credit is due. Some people get upset at me for giving credit to Tucker Carlson on this. It doesn't mean I agree with him on anything else, but he is right. A war with Iran would be disastrous in this case. And remember, the president doesn't listen to Ali Velshi. but he does watch Tucker Carlson. And so the thing that we have to watch out for is on any given day, John Bolton says to him, oh my God, they just ran into one of our ships, whether it's true or not true. Or they just fired at some of our troops, whether it's true or untrue. You gotta go to war right now. It's at least good to have some conservatives and defense officials saying, don't do that.
It is good. One other factor into Trump's decision making could be Benjamin Netanyahu and the close relationship he has with him. They're having a little bromance right now. And remember, the Israeli government does want the United States
to fight its wars for it.
Pretty much, especially when it comes to Iran. So these are all factors to take into consideration, but it is pretty depressing when you have a situation where you're rooting for the dumb guy who's leading the country and hoping that he ignores the war hawks in his administration.
Yeah, and if Trump had any sense and was actually inclined towards peace, he'd fire Bolton in a second. No one who's in favor of peace would ever hire John Bolton. Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.